Hi, everyone. It's Candace Craw-Goldman, and welcome to another episode of Quantum Realms 2022. And today, I am welcoming my good friend, and I don't know, Patricia, I'm thinking of you as sort of like my home base. When I need to touch home base in this crazy year of 2022, I think about you.
Oh, what a beautiful thing to say.
Welcome, Patricia. And to be all transparent, we are recording this a little bit before it's going to run in mid-April, but we were just talking before I hit the record button about your upcoming book. And I had copied and pasted a quote, and I thought it would be a great way to introduce you and your work to the audience.
Great.
Okay, so here is from Patricia Cori. One day, not so far, not so very far away, we will have ascended at last, well past this division, and words will not be needed to unify what still today is our experience of separateness. For we will have arrived. We will simply communicate heart to heart, soul to soul, and then, my friends, we will truly be free at long last. In the meantime, I choose truth, because bowing down to the fear of the monster in the darkness, endlessly shapeshifting like a putrid sludge on the waters of human emotion, is a luxury none of us can afford, not when the future of humanity and all life forms on this planet is at stake. This is my very personal declaration of independence. And this is a quote from the upcoming book, Hacking the God Code. And I know you called it your personal independence. And I'm like, can I sign it too?
Absolutely. Well, I called it that because obviously it's not the Declaration of Independence, but by all means, I hope it's the Declaration of Independence for many souls, because never like now have we needed to recognize our sovereignty and stand in it. Never like now, never ever like now. And so that is sort of a mantra, what I wrote, for all of us to remember that we are sovereign beings, and we will be tested ad infinitum. And the more the tests come in, the stronger we have to stand.
Agreed. My mother was a young girl in Nazi Germany, and my whole life, hearing her stories and talking to her about what that was like, I wondered about it. And I thought about all of the very brave things that she did and all of the ways that she and her family felt powerless. And from the time I was very small, I asked myself, how would I be in such a time? And, sometimes we think, oh, well, that's history and that can't repeat itself. But oh my goodness, it's repeating itself. And, at this time, I actually want to thank you again for something else, which is you are the one who inspired the theme for our entire week-long event of Quantum Realms.
Oh, wow, great.
Power and truth. Those words came straight from your mouth. And I'm like, oh, she's speaking my heart again. So, thinking about those things, gosh, all of them, but I love it that you start with integrity, because if we don't have personal integrity, where are we?
It's so true. And I have to say that one of the greatest honors that I experience as a person that is out there, hold on, sorry, I'm trying to get the light improved.
I know, I can't see you very well. But I can see your beautiful.
I've got a light. You know why? Because I've got the backlight. And so no matter what I do at this time of day, it just, okay, let's see if that's a little better. Is that a little better?
Well, it's a little better, but that's okay, because we can feel your presence and hear your words. And Patricia, I just, however you come through is going to be happy days for me.
Well, I'm already, Italian, so half of my image is Mediterranean looking. Okay, how about this? Here we go. I've got a plan.
Okay.
Bear with me, people, because let's see if this helps. I'm jerry-rigging this.
Okay.
All right, that's the best I can do.
It looks like candlelight. I'm happy. It's all good.
Good.
It's all good.
So we're talking about integrity, and I have to say that in my lifetime of work in service, one of the greatest things that I hear from people is that they feel my integrity. And I can't tell you how important that is. I don't care about being right. I don't care about being popular. It's obvious from the way that I come across. But I do care that people trust that I'm coming from a place of honesty and purity of intent, and that I put integrity above everything. And, in this moment, it's getting harder to find because there are a lot of egos out there and a lot of untruth and misinformation and just a lot of silliness. And so when you say it's like coming home, that really just totally touches my heart, because it's a great honor to be perceived that way and to feel that way about each other.
Well, yeah, thanks again. These last 2 years, and I started thinking about this idea of Groundhog Day, and I'm like, Groundhog Day, it's been like Groundhog years, right? We've done Groundhog
Exactly.
years, which is no
True.
wonder we have like this. I think we all have a little bit of weariness in us. And if we don't, I'm worried about you. I really am, because in this war, and it is a war, if you're not participating in this, in at least in some way, you're surrendering, and I'm not surrendering. No way. My DNA won't let me. My ancestors won't let me. So, I forgive myself for that little bit of weariness. But what I have found about, to continue this idea about integrity, the last couple years have sifted that, right? Some people that we might have really put high up on our integrity list, now we're like, oh my goodness, really? Oh my, really? I mean, they're showing their true colors.
I think that it's also, in a way, it's wonderful because these people who are bowing down to ego and whatever else they're gleaning from positioning themselves this way are our teachers. And so they're helping us refine our discernment meters. I'm big on discernment, and I'm blessed with a pretty powerful psychic punch bag in my gut. And it's just, I look at people and they're being the accolades about their, what is the word? Not informants, whistleblowers, or their intel and all this stuff. And I'm like, really? Really? So I could just say, well, I have intel that says, and then everybody's going to believe that. I mean, so this is what's happening. So people are being punch bagged left and right. It's like a volleyball game or a tetherball game, because everybody's got intel, everybody's got the right answer. And it's just like, what I'm trying to do is keep inviting people to dig deeper, study, examine, not to trust anything that's coming out, only trust their gut, trust the gut. And that knowing, that inner knowing. And if ever there was a time for us to turn up that valve, is now. And that's always been my message. I mean, even in my books, it's always written in every book. Don't just blindly accept this information. Run it past your truth meter. And if it doesn't pass the test, put it down.
It's so interesting how I think society, schooling, all of it, all those systems have tried to kind of, squeeze that out of us. I started noticing this about a decade ago, just in my own personal realms and adventures and lessons of my own life. And I picked up on a phrase that I would hear some people say that bothered me to no end. They would say, well, they didn't want to put their hat in any sort of ring, or make any sort of statement about what was happening right in front of them, because they said, I just want to remain neutral.
But what they really want to remain is, they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be caught being wrong. And that's the ego. So, my attitude is, this is what I have to share with. I just today said, this is what I have to share with you. Perhaps it wasn't this one where I said, I might be wrong. Oh yeah, it was this one. I said, I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on. I can't get my hand around it yet. I am not positioned to be the almighty Wizard of Oz. I'm just one person who's trying to figure it out. That's what we're all doing, trying to figure it out, because we're living in a 4D insane upside down world. And to think you've got the answers because you've got a couple of whistleblowers or whatever, is ludicrous, or you're getting it in your dreams, or you're channeling it, or whatever. It's like right now, I don't like to even discuss channel information because I feel like it's not that time now. Now it's time for us to all be grounded in our truth, which is part of the title of the week, holding our integrity, grounded in truth as we understand it, not as we possess it,
right,
or have acquired it, because it doesn't exist that way. It's only as we understand it. And if it changes, and if that understanding is wrong, I'm no less of a person.
it's boots on the ground kind of time, isn't it?
It really is.
Some of my favorite stories that my mother told me about living in 1930s and 40s Germany was the way she, even as a young girl in her family, subverted the rules. Many in her family, and even older people, who, the whole thing was fearful, and they felt completely powerless. My mother did things like sneak sandwiches to Jewish prisoners, and she would constantly break the rules. She did what she could, but she would tell me this, and I would say, "Mom, how come it was you? And you were so young. How come it was
Somebody had
you?"
to do it.
Yeah, it was in her. It was in her. And I said, "Mom, what would your family say?" Now, remember, her own mother died when she was 4. Her father was killed right as all this was going on. She was being raised by a stepmother and a step grandmother. And
Oh,
and I said, how did you do this? And what did your family say? And you know what she said? She said this: "Oh, it'll all blow over." A lot of them were telling themselves that all the time. "Oh, it'll blow over." And they were wringing their hands, and they were suffering as well. They didn't have enough food. They were being persecuted too. There were Jewish members in their family who were committing suicide and hiding and all of these other things, but they were the typical German, of the masses. And I asked questions over and over again because I truly wanted to understand, how did you live life all those years? How did you do it, knowing the trains were going by right over there? And she did her best to tell me how they managed. And I think that kind of brings us to this next word I'd love for you to speak on, which is power. Because if you give away all of your power and all of your own personal power, you can't really face the next day in front of you. You've got to have some of that engine and some of that life within you, that inner power to keep going during all of this nonsense.
yes. There are a couple of things in what you said that I'd like to address. And the first is, how did she do it? The same way we're doing. I mean, it was, probably more severe in her case because she was watching the trains go by, but we're watching the people drop dead. It's just that most of us are seeing it remotely, right? So we're very much in that paradigm. And so how are we coping? Some people are ignorant, blind, refusing, angry, all these lower emotions. And some other people are desperately trying. I mean, some of the doctors now that are coming out, there was this wonderful hearing with Senator Johnson, and these powerful people, McCullough and Malone and other doctors, Lee Dundas, the wonderful lawyer, speaking out with no holds barred. This is, can we speak freely, or is this YouTube?
Well, it's YouTube, but I'm hoping you'll speak as freely as you are able. I know
Well, I can speak freely.
We've gotten very skilled at this, right? Talking around all the words.
So speaking about what it is, what it really is, what you really, really want, and turning up the voice of opposition to the point that it can't be silenced anymore. So that's the power is, I hope I can finish this thought because it's a good one. Moving completely away from savior mentality.
Yeah.
And moving away from the dictum, we are the saviors we've been waiting for, and actually living it, watching humanity do it, is a huge transition for us. So always when I'm looking at what's going down on this planet and how much we're, like you said, we're tired and it's exhausting, but here we are We've been saying the words, well, now it's happening. And we haven't quite transitioned into understanding that, oh my God, this is a good thing. In the middle of all this crisis, this is a very, very good thing, because it's always been my work with the Syrian High Council, my own work as a guide has always been, it's going to take us being against the wall as a civilization before we rebel, because we're comfortable. A large swathe of this planet is comfortable enough never to stand up, because it's like, I got the chicken in the pot, I got my cute car, I got a new phone, and I'm sorry about the people in Africa. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, and I told my mother, she said, if you need to eat the food on your plate because the people in Africa are starving. And I looked at her and I said, well, then why aren't we giving them this food? And
I
she
said the
goes,
same thing. I said the same thing to my mom.
I said, instead of eating it, Mom, I mean, me eating it isn't the problem. Why don't we just give it to them? Let's start. And you know what happened? When I was in the third grade, I went to school one day, because we used to have in America, where, at least in California, we had a Jack Emery drive. Do you know what that is?
I do not.
Okay, so every year the school would, Jack Emery, I don't know who the person was, but it was a drive to collect food for the poor, right? So as a 8-year-old, or however old I was in third grade, I preceded the Jack Emery drive and went to school one day, and I told my teacher that I was preparing to start a food for the poor campaign. And I got all the teachers involved, all the kids involved. I was just a young little kid. And they were saying, okay. And I wrote it all out in kid writing, to bring your food, and didn't fake it out because I was 8 or 9. But I said, you need to bring all your canned food to my house, and we're storing all the food in the garage. And then my mom and dad are going to distribute it. They didn't know anything about it. So 2 days later, these parents started arriving at my house with boxes of canned goods and food for Africa. Or no, it wasn't for Africa. It was for the poor in our local area. And my mom had no clue. And so this woman said, I brought this for Patty's drive. And my mother said, sorry? And she said, for the food drive. And meanwhile, my garage was filling up with food. And my mother had no clue what she was going to do about this. She said, honey, you really got to run these things by me. Oh, I said, I'm sorry. And my mother, dealing with me as a kid, she said, wasn't exactly the easiest thing. But she managed to engage a few people and actually distribute this food. But at one point, she said, it was stacking up high in the garage, all this food, which is the beauty of innocent children, which I'm so concerned they're taking away. The purity of the child mind. And, in our, I guess I'm veering off from the question of power, but not really. It's like,
No.
now they're after the children. They've always been after the children, but now they're the next step is the 0 to 5. So let us, when we feel weak and disempowered, let us remember that the children have no hope without us. We haven't got the luxury, as you read in my little blurb, to be weak, to be tired, to be fearful, because we have a civilization to save here. And the children, without us stepping up to the plate, are done. There's no hope for the children if we don't. And so we must, and we will, and we are. And that's power.
I read something earlier. I mean, a horrific thing to mention almost, but I think it bears repeating. So the Nazi forces between 1939 and 1945, they actually hung more than 4,000 women of various ages publicly, to use as, look, you better not talk. If we're going to hang these teenage girls sometimes, if we can do this to them and make examples of them, we can do this to you. And that's one way they silenced everyone, in a really horrible way of silencing people. But I've been thinking a lot. I know not long ago you celebrated a birthday, and I was thinking a lot about, you're just a little bit older than I am, but I've been thinking about, where are the artists, and I put you in this category as somebody who writes the book, who's the creators, right? And that very powerful time in the 60s primarily, where there was this upswelling, and the artists got on board. And I've been paying attention and looking, where are they today? And I think they took a while. They took a while to start making themselves known, but I think there's some power and even some truth that needs to come out in that way, by that group of creatives who are being silenced, as well. But I thought, not since that time, have I really viscerally felt that power within the realm of the creative. What do you think about that idea?
Well, yeah, I mean, you see, there are so many prongs to this thing. There's the politically correct problem, and how they had to put that in place to control language, thought, creation, intellectualism, so that they could squeeze that creative flow that appeals to the humanity within us, because they want robots. They don't want humans, right? So laughter, humor, the comedians are talking about it all the time. They can't, I mean, look what happened to Dave Chappelle. I don't know if you're aware of it, but
Yes.
this guy is like your super comedian of the decade. And now he's pretty silent because of the whole debacle with the woke rebellion against his jokes about whatever he was joking about. But the groups that have been empowered to stand in opposition to everything human are part of the plan. So you've got that prong, which is silence everybody, silence the media, control the media, silence the alternative media. But it's important to discuss this, silencing art and creativity, because a robot will never be able to do it. Oh yeah, they could make, computerized extraordinary designs, but they'll never be able to create a robot that has the human heart and the creator within that designs everything. And through our fingers comes that creative godliness that we call art, right? And so, and when you talked about hanging the young girls, it's like, of course, because killing soldiers, well, people are hardened to that. That's war, man. But hanging up the young innocent, killing innocence, that's their objective. Kill innocence. Innocence is the opposition to evil. Sweetness, innocence, joy, laughter. And that's why they're after the children. It's one of the reasons why they're after the children. And so it never, I just can't imagine any other time in history, even that dark time, where we were globally so called to stand for each other, and particularly the children, because if we don't, there won't be any more human race. There won't. I mean, I'm seeing, speaking of things you don't want to talk about, I'm seeing videos of these new children that are being born to people who have had the snake bite, and they're not human. And, I saw a video of a Spanish obstetrician who said, these are not human children. So we need to grab this back, suffer our losses, because many have been destroyed and others will die. And that's the tragedy of this moment. But we need, to take our power back and stand in this collective for the children, for everyone, and for the future of the human race. And I believe that the power, of course, is one, standing in your sovereignty and knowing that you're an immortal being regardless. I mean, what is more important and more empowering than to always remember you're just passing through here, hello, don't take it too seriously. And the second is that the ultimate power is in our unity. And so we've been all with our heads in the computers or whatever, and this event, in a way, forced extreme separation and isolation to where we couldn't ignore it anymore. And so in a way, in a very difficult way to understand, it's a blessing.
Boy, it really is. I've been thinking a lot about this idea of separateness and unity and separateness and unity. And, the whole idea of the heart field being in general 6 feet of an electrical force around your body. And, the dictate to stay 6 feet away from others so that we don't interact our heart field. I think some of the things that I ponder at night, when I turn off the bedside lamp, I think about my heart and I think about how my heart feels the other hearts in the world, and how I have to protect my heart, be true to my heart, connect with other hearts, think about the unified whole, but also, I have a boundary around my own heart too. I can't let my heart be stomped on, or I don't have any power. And I think this sort of, are we individuals? Are we unity? Are we collective? Are we hive mind? I mean, there's some of that I think if you're not a person thinking about some of this at night when you turn off your bedside lamp, I wonder how you came up in the world so much differently than I did, because it's just everywhere seeing that. How do you
Well,
think?
I grew up with the most extraordinary mother, and she was love personified, but she was also extremely strong. And, she wouldn't blink at telling somebody to go F off if they were in her face. And so I watched her, I emulated her because she had her boundaries. And as long as you were good and coming to her in goodness and love, she would give you her house. But she had discernment, enough discernment to say this person is, and I think that this is really important. I mean, I've gotten to a point in my life, I do have a very strong psychic faculty, and I just don't have time for bullshit. I just don't have it. So when I see it coming in at me, I can identify it usually. And when I try to counteract that instant thanks but no thanks, it always ends up wrong for me. So when the voice starts of like, Pat, give these people a second chance, or give them a time. Come on, what are you with this judgment? Love and light and be one with everyone. And it's like, no. I'm a sovereign being. These are my boundaries. If you plan to come in, I can feel the energy. That's it's more than 6 feet, right? So if it comes in and it doesn't feel right, the let's say a person on a really powerful path can stop it there. Say, no, thanks. I really don't think so. And then if not, it comes in. That's the spiritual boundary. Then you've got the emotional boundary, and then you've got the mental boundary. No, vice versa. Sorry, the mental, then the emotional, until finally it metastasizes as illness inside. And so I think that what's really so important is, yes, to have an open heart, but that doesn't mean you have to let anybody, just everyone in. Open to those who come at my frequency, my love vibe, and not anything that isn't of the highest good for me and them. So I don't frequent a lot of people because I have no time. Well, first of all, I'm on this island, isolated in the middle of the Atlantic, but I don't have time for it. I've got better things to do with my time than deal with people's drama.
To
And
add,
it's a fine thread between that and being open and loving to everyone. It's just like, yes, but
right.
you have to walk your mark. You can have my love, like my mom. You can have my love, but you've got to come in with the right energy, and so that it's an exchange. It's just like healers being asked to give love offerings by people who call them every week. I've got one of these right now. Every week, Patricia, surely you have time to help me. I'm demons and whatever. And it's like, what are you bringing to me? There has to be an exchange of energy here. And most people get that by now, but still a lot of people don't.
Yeah, service but not servitude is what I
I
tell
love
my
that.
my own community and students. I wrote down a couple of things that I've that's occurred to me over the last little bit, and I've thought of you when and these are 2 words, just 2 words, kind of, let's call them new words. And I wondered how you might respond to them, or how, if you've seen them out there. And one is menticide. Have you heard that word used before, menticide? So it's like suicide, of course. It comes but it's the mental capacity. So, destroying the mental capacity. Because I was thinking a lot about this idea of truth. And in our community, in the spiritual community, it's like, well, I've got my truth and I've got your truth. And there's this thing called objective truth. And, we can argue about a lot of that stuff ad nauseum. But I wondered about this idea of the absolute deletion or destruction of the mental capacity to look at facts in the face. I mean, just laid right out in front of them and deny them, just deny them. And
yeah, but one of the problems here is that people have never been so polarized and so locked into their position, so that there's no more dialogue. So in other words, you don't have to agree with my opinion. But when did we stop being able to talk about it without being at war? So, I mean, the Greeks did it, the Egyptians did it, the Romans did it, councils, senates, the Parthenon, moments of greatness, where that's where we get to the truth. You don't come to the conversation saying, I know the truth. No, I know the truth. You come to it saying, this is how I perceive this. Right. Well, you're wrong. The old days was like, wow, I never thought of it that way. In a successful interaction, it's like, this is how I perceive it. Wow, that's interesting. This is my perception. This is honoring the other. It's gone. Everybody has to be right. Everybody has a position. These positions are pre-established. You're either for us or against us, as George Bush said. And nurturing and fueling that mindset, of course, is the power structure, the media, and all of the education system that want you to believe one way. So, this great war is between the people that are trying to hold a semblance of alternative versus this machination of mind control. And the culprit here is, in my opinion, the alternative media is guilty of this. I know the truth. I've got my informants. And this is the way it is. And Trump is alive, Trump is dead, Trump is green, Trump is yellow. And all of these, dogmatic positions that are not helping us keep a dialogue going, because that's the only way we win. Right? And if this is happening in our sectors of spirituality and alternative or whatever, we're fueling these guys. They're like, they can't even get united in this little subsector.
Exactly.
So the more we fight about who's right and who's the genius and who's got the best informants, the more they win. Which is why my position is like, please disagree with me, but with dignity. Let's have a conversation, not a war.
Why is this so hard? Why is this so hard? Even as a kid, I remember thinking, back down to the creationism versus the spiritual or religious or evolution, creationism and spiritual religious ideas of God and source, and then evolution. And even as a little tiny kid, I'm like, why can't it be both? Why can't it be both? And I was never, the world in front of me was like, no, you got to pick a team. And I'm like, I'm not, because I can see stuff here and I can see stuff here. And why can't we talk about, and then it was just being, dismissed. If you don't pick one, then
you're out.
We don't want to hear you.
When I was a kid, we had religious relief in school for people that were Catholic predominantly. You could go, I think, once every two days a week for one of your classes. You went to this, I guess, catechism or something. I don't remember the name of it. But my grandmother was a fanatic Catholic, and so she insisted that my mother, who said, I don't care what you believe, honey, just be a good kid. So I went to this catechism to appease this unpleasant grandmother. And the first time I went was the last time I went, because the nun was giving this whole spiel about Jesus Christ walked on the water, and the storyline. And I was in the back of the room going, excuse me. And finally she called on me. Every time I raised my hand, it drove the nuns nuts, because I was asking good questions, right? I said, excuse me, I don't understand. What, Patty? I said, how can you just say that it's a miracle? I mean, why do we have to believe everything's a miracle? In other words, the church doesn't have to have any substance. It's just a miracle. Anything you don't understand is a miracle, but we're here in school. We're supposed to be learning. And she said, I'll talk to you at the end of the class. I go to the back of the room, and the nun comes over and she tells me not to come back. And I said, why? And she said, because you will never believe. You're one of those minds that will never believe. And I said, because I dare to question it, what you're saying, bearing in mind I was 11 or 12, because I dare to question what you're saying. And she said, because you have no faith. And I remember so clearly looking at her going, boy, the Catholic Church must be really doing well if you can afford to kick out one of your potential customers.
Oh my goodness.
Which did not please my grandmother very much. But again, from the mouths of babes, from children, comes so much truth, right?
My mom told me about.
Oops, you're frozen.
Yeah. There we go. We're back. My mom told me, also raised Catholic. She told me that she would be forced to go to confession. And I said, well, Mom, what kind of things did you confess? And she said, I was a kid. What did I have to confess? I didn't have anything to confess. So I lied about doing things so that I would confess and make the priest happy. And the whole thing was like, what? You know, and in my own sense, I really, because of my mother's upbringing, I didn't have to participate in some of that. But I actually went I was curious, you know, I went with friends and I asked a lot of questions. And I think it was a vacation Bible school once where the subject may have, and probably inadvertently, moved to the whole subject of sin being, of sex being a sin. And even as a little kid, I was in elementary school. I mean, I knew birds and bees. I was a country girl. I knew how things worked. And I couldn't figure that out. And I tried to ask that question too. I'm like, wait a second. Isn't that how we all got here? What? You know, and yeah, same thing. You just stop talking about those things.
Yeah, guilt-based religion does not allow for questioning the narrative.
Nope.
It's the same old story, different epoch, right?
Right. Yeah, and same with the education. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. I wondered, were you like me? I saw very early on that the whole education system was kind of gameable. You know, there were things that there were some skills that I wanted or needed, and there were others that I saw that were complete baloney. And I, checked out of either mentally or physically and just didn't go to class. I did well in school because I saw how gameable it was and how you really, you had to have a degree, a high school diploma to do the next thing or whatever. So I'm like, okay, so this is how the system works. But I actually saw that, and further in my own children, and especially in my daughter, going to school in the, in the 2000s or in the 2010-ish time frame, getting her college degree, and she would come home with these stories, and she would say, Mom, when the teacher would actually give options, like you can do this for a project, or I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. Even then, a great number of students in her class, her peers, would be upset with this idea that they had to create an approach or a thought about something. They were upset at the teacher that they couldn't figure out, why aren't you doing what my other teachers do? My other teachers lay out the platter of stuff. I'm supposed to regurgitate it. And that's what I'm used to. And you're not doing that in this little moment right here. And she found that more people were upset with this option of being creative and independently thinking about something, and being upset about that and wanting the regurgitation of ideas.
Not unlike the people wanting the question of what's going on, not to be challenged, and acquiescing to being taking what's given to them.
Yeah.
Right. I have to say that I had an extraordinary education because, first of all, I had my mother, and she was wonderfully versed in opera. She was a very cultural person without the foo-foo attitude, and she would speak to me in Italian, and she would engage me in lofty thoughts, lofty conversations about life and the meaning of life, number one. Number two, I was an honor student in high school and in college. So that meant we got the best professors. So I was a college in my era, you had to be college prep or I don't even know what the other artist or whatever. There were categories that if you were college prep, you had to take certain courses. Like you had to take 3 years of a foreign language and 2 years of math or whatever. And the only course that I had a problem with was biology because we had to dissect a cat. And
Oh,
I told
I'd fail right there. I'd fail.
I told the teacher, sorry, I'm not going to do that. And it was just, part of my personality to question and rebel. I mean, I'm a rebel. I know that. So he said, Patricia, this is part of the curriculum. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not touching that cat. I said, in fact, I'm not even coming in the room. Sorry, it makes me sick. And he said, well, let me put it this way. If you don't, and I said, it makes me sick. And I threw up on the floor right in front of him. And I said, I have to go now. I mean, I don't think I deliberately threw up. It just made me sick. And the smell of the formaldehyde and this dead animal. And I threw up. And so I got excused from the class because when I went to the principal's office or whatever, and I was an honor student, so I was, loved as a student. And the principal said, okay, Patricia, what is the problem? And I said, it makes me sick to think of cutting a dead animal. I can't do it. So they put me in some other course for that hour. But I was blessed with outstanding professors in high school and also in college. And so I was, like in high school English, we were studying Greek and Roman mythology. And I just dove into it. And I love language. So you might have noticed I'm always complaining about the misuse of English because I have a very, very powerful background in English literature and English grammar. And so it was a natural for me to approach it academically. And in college, again, because of the honors program, I was, these professors. I mean, one of my professors' name was Dr. Panagopoulos. And we were being taught blocks of history, blocks of literature in this special humanities course, right? So he was the Greek period. And a writer, a philosopher. And I told him, Professor Panagopoulos, this summer I'm going to Greece. And he said, when will you be there? And I told him, and he said, Patricia, I will be there. Miss Cori, I will be there then. I said, oh, wow. And he said, here's my card. He said, I will show you the Parthenon. So imagine this orator par excellence. And he takes me up to the Parthenon. Just the two of us. I don't even know how it was possible because it was still summer tourist season. Just the two of us. I think it was really early in the morning. And he stood on this rock and he said, it is from this place that Socrates made his famous oration. And out comes this poetry just for me. And as he was reciting this, his tears were coming out of his eyes. And I mean, that's education to me. Transmitting the love of wisdom, the love of history, the love of humanity. So yeah, I had a great education, really great education. I wouldn't change a thing.
You are lucky. I mean, you really, really are. There were many things about my own education that was lacking. I feel much that I was self-educated, although I mean, I was such a rebel too, but I was a strange rebel. I had top grades, absolutely top grades, and yet I literally was for a time. I had like a juvenile delinquent record because of all of the classes that I skipped, because it was like, I love my English lit class. I love my English class. I love this class. you guys are going to waste time those 3 days sitting there and reading. We didn't have air conditioning in many of our classrooms way back then. And it's, it's going to be 90 degrees. I think I'll go ride my horse or hang out with my friends, and do teenage rebel things then. But because I'd already read it all, I'd already done my whatever, and they didn't know what to do with me very well. The one good thing about my own mom was she supported me in that. She's like, you do you. Looks like you got some of this stuff figured out. So there's that. As far as education and writing, though, I want to go back to your book in the few minutes that we have left. The God Code. Can you just even define that?
Well, that's what I'm attempting to do in the book. So it
The
is,
whole book.
the essence of the book is called Hacking the God Code, the Conspiracy to Steal the Human Soul. Not exactly lightweight reading. And the point is that within the DNA, that this what I call the divine blueprint, this architecture of every living thing, is woven into this lattice we call DNA, right? And that within its intricate formulaic wisdom, which is based on 4 letters for the moment, because they still have to figure out what's in the other 10 strands, billions and billions and billions of words could be formed by matching these letters in different equations, right? So somebody said it would take the most sophisticated code writer 30 years to dissect one genomic segment of the DNA, to transcribe it, right? 30 years writing 12 hours a day to begin to try to understand what's going on. So when I talk about the God Code in the DNA, I'm talking about the fact that I can't give away the point of the book here, but
Sure.
that there's not only, we know that we're divine beings, we know that we are designed by a creator, well, some of us believe, let's put it that way, that we are the design, and all living things are designed by a force that we can call creator, prime creator, God, whatever that feels comfortable for people to identify. And that you simply need to look at a leaf or a pine cone to know that this is the ultimate artist, this is the ultimate mathematician. When people ask me what I think God is, I go, the ultimate mathematician. And they're like, what? Oh yeah, the ultimate mathematician playing with his coloring board. That's what I think God is, the ultimate mathematician, the ultimate essence of love, expressing through number and form all creation, right? And so that woven into the DNA, that's the foundation of it. That's why every single living thing has a formulaic substance that is within every nucleus of every cell that's called DNA. And it is the plan, it is the architecture, it is the design of how the living thing looks, acts, lives, dies, unfolds, heals, you name it. The floor plan, the ultimate record keeper is the DNA. And so my point is, do we really want to be sending in artificial messengers that are going to change that ultimate God code within us, which is perfection? And of course, the answer is, well, yeah, but there are many diseases we can heal. But my question is, in the divine plan of all life, are we supposed to be synthetically healed? Or are we supposed to come in and go out, as was part of the divine plan, as was part of our own soul's destiny, determination? Look, I'm going to drop in. In fact, people feel so sorry for these people who die young. And for me, it's like, okay, 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 thank you very much, I'm out of here. But, in order to feel that way, you have to believe in your immortality. If you don't, which I've always known I'm an immortal being. And I've had 2 near-death experiences where I've absolutely gotten clarification on that. And so it's hard for me to imagine what it feels like or what pain people go through when they have a sense of being immortal. This is it. My own brother, he said, I'd love to believe like you do, but for me, this is it. You've got your 80 years and that's it. I go, and then what happens? Nothing. I was like, oh, no wonder you're afraid of the virus.
Yep. Oh
Right.
my. Yep. Well, I think this is a great place to end it. Several of the speakers last year touched on this, and I think it remains that God code within us. It's precious, and at least in my life and my world, I'm going to keep it just as it is without alteration, and others can do what they will. But
And that is what I'm trying to tell people. I am a sovereign being. This is the way I came in, and this is the way I'm going out, no matter what. So,
agreed.
and that is integrity, truth, and power.
Perfect. Oh my God, that's just so perfect. I feel so blessed that I came in at the same timeline, at the same little strand to be able to interact with you in this way. Patricia Cori, thank you. Where can people find you and your new book?
New book is not, it's going to the publisher. It's going to take time for it to come out. But if they, please come to my website, patriciacori.com, and get on my newsletter list. It's free. And I don't hound people. I think I put out a couple of newsletters a year, but that will get them plugged into being the first people to know when the book is coming out. It's being published by Inner Traditions, so big publisher. And so they'll be able to get it everywhere once it's available.
Publisher with integrity, right?
Yeah, imagine that, huh?
Right.
It'll be very nice to be with a new publisher after being cancel cultured and,
Dear. Well, we will persevere. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me, Patricia. We love you.
It's always wonderful.
Absolutely loves you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, darling. Love you too. Goodbye, everybody. It's been wonderful.